This is where the majority of our production takes place in our fly rods. So it all starts in the room back behind us here. That's our blank rolling room. Now we do not go into that room for a couple of reasons. There are quite a few trade secrets, and we'd frankly like to keep them a secret. When we talk about a blank, what we're talking about is if you take a fly rod and you take off the grip and you take off all of the guides and the writing, you are left with what we call a blank. There are two elements to rolling a blank. The first element is what we call the mandrel. And the mandrel is what you might consider the physical mold. Whatever is wrong with the mandrel will be mirrored into the part that is rolled onto this mandrel. So it's very important we take care of our mandrels. The second element is the graphite itself. The carbon fiber that we use is very delicate, and the vendors that we get our carbon fiber from, they will take that graphite and they will impregnate it with resins and other things that give it elasticity and give it strength as well. We have a pattern cutting room, and the gentleman in that room will get an order to cut so many particular patterns. What he'll do is he'll go to the pattern book, cut the graphite in that exact pattern to match a specific mandrel. Now, where does the pattern and the mandrel come from? That comes from the rod designer. He's the one who figures out all the material, all of the tapers, all of the things that are so important in that fly rod to give that rod a good quality action, a good quality of transfer of energy down through the rod. So that's very important. Once the pattern is cut, they'll come down to the blank rolling room, and what we do is apply kind of a tacking resin to this mandrel. Then we get the edge of the pattern and we put it on the mandrel, and then we put it under a big giant, what we call a rolling table, that pushes down and it applies pressure on the mandrel, and then it rolls at the same time, and it rolls all of the graphite onto the mandrel itself. Then it'll come to this table for an inspection process. After it comes to this process, what we do is it goes to the tape machine, and that's where we will apply a cellophane tape on the outside of the graphite so that that blank, when it goes into the oven, will have something on the outside of the graphite to hold everything in place. The oven that we use will hold a batch of rods, and each part will bake so that the carbon fibers, the resins, all the things will basically be fused together in a manner to give that blank structure. Now, Winston is known for its Winston green finish, and there are rods out in the industry nowadays that have that green finish, and frankly we consider that a compliment. Once the finish is applied, every section is then labeled, every section is ready to move into the next phase of production. We have several ferruling benches, and the ferrule is what connects the section of the rod. If you have a two-piece rod, a tip section and a butt section, the ferrule is what connects those sections. We use two different types of ferrule designs in our rods. We use an internal spigot ferrule, and we use what's called a sleeve-over ferrule. Our sleeve-over ferrules, from a design standpoint, are much more complicated. The transfer of energy, literally, it starts on the outside diameter of this blank and will transfer its energy down to the inside diameter of the same blank. Then when you insert this, that energy then needs to transfer from the outside diameter of this blank down to the inside diameter where the next section inserts into it. Then they're ready to move on to the next station, which is where we determine what side of the rod we're going to place the guides. So the way we do it is we'll eyeball every section, make that arch move in a consistent manner, and then we mark 180 degrees off of that. That's the side we place the guides. And the weight of the guides, if the arch is moving upward like this and we put the guides opposite of that, the weight of the guides helps to counterbalance the natural arch that is in that rod. We've already determined the correct side that the guides will go on. Now we need to determine how far apart those guides will go. And you can see all of the different templates that we have down below. The procedure is we'll bring the rods to this station. Let's say we built 10 9-foot 5-weight boron 2X's. We will assemble the rods with a straightness mark up on every section. Then we get the correct template. We tape everything down so that it cannot move. Then we get our simple straight edge and a dark green pin. and we simply mark across all of the rods wherever our template tells us there should be a guide. Then the bud sections will all go to have the grips put on. What you see here are all to our design. The shapes are to our design, and more importantly, tapered to match the taper of our specific rods. After the grips are on, we put them into small bundles, and we have about 20 or so home wrappers that come in every other day, pick up their rods, take them home, and then wrap the guides on at home and just bring them back throughout the week. You can see this is what they look like when they come back from the wrapper. So everything has to be in place before it's ready to go into the coating room. This is our coating room. The coating material that we use is actually clear and it's colorless, and we only apply it wherever there's thread on the rod, with the exception of a small area down here on the butt section. The thread that we use is a much lighter color green, and it's dyed to Winston specs. It's not available anywhere in the world except to Winston rod, and that's because when you apply coating material, it matches the finish perfectly and gives the rods a very beautiful look. This is where we apply coating material. What we will do is we will assemble the rod, we will put it on a little mini chuck that spins the rod, and every Winston rod gets a minimum of 3 coats. So the first coat, we'll mix it, and as the rod spins, just with a small paintbrush, we'll go down the rod and apply coating material wherever there's thread. When the second coat is applied, it then gets ready and it goes on to the big drying wheels. After it's on the big wheel, it'll come back out. We'll apply the Winston label, and that's just a small decal that we put on the rod. We will also put on every single rod the model and a serial number, and the serial number goes on every section of the rod. After it's logged, it comes out to this station, and this is one of the final inspection areas before the rod actually goes into inventory. You can see all of our inventory for our Vapor and Ascent series, and then all of our premium rods as well. So the procedure goes is we'll get an order for a rod, we'll take it out of inventory, then it will be staged to have the reel seat glued on. After that, it goes through its final inspection. Once it passes its final inspection, it's ready to be boxed up and shipped out to the Winston dealer that placed the order. So from a farrowing bench into inventory, the normal flow of production can sometimes take 6 to 8 weeks or so. That is the start to finish production line of a Winston graphite rod. We take great pride in the production process. Everybody involved has essentially put their heart into the production of that particular rod. We make sure that when a rod leaves our factory, that rod is what we consider a perfect fly rod. We go to great efforts to make sure that every procedure is maintained throughout the production of that particular rod.